The Diary of a Harlequin is proudly brought to you by Charles Stanley Wealth Managers, official player welfare partner of Harlequins. If you're looking to start your investment journey, then Charles Stanley has lots of tips and ideas on how to secure your financial future. Welcome to the Diary of a Harlequin. I'm your host, Joe Yates-Round, and today we'll be talking to Tyrone Green about what it takes and what it means to be a Harlequin. Tyrone joined Quins in 2020 to little fanfare but with huge promise. Moving to England from South Africa, he was made to wait for his full debut, but announced himself with a brace of tries against Newcastle Falcons that season that on re-watching you could call trademark. An explosive runner, he was man of the match in the Harlequin semi-final win over Bristol in 2021, known amongst fans as the Miracle of Bristol. Away from the pitch, he's recently become a father for the first time and has committed his future to Harlequins by signing a new long-term deal. Welcome, Tyrone.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's great to have you on the podcast. So let's kind of go back, I guess, to we start when you joined Quins, and we'll go back even further if that's all right, because you came into Quins 2020, height of the pandemic, moving over from South Africa. What was that whole experience like? 'Cause it must have been a huge leap into the unknown for you.
Yeah, no, I think coming over in general was a big leap. I think COVID made it easier but hard at the same time because COVID is something new, surprises everyone. So it was something to get used to, but it meant a new start for me also. So when that hit, it was like almost the end of a chapter and starting a new chapter for me. Right. So coming over with my fiance at the time was actually looking forward to it. Growing up, it's one of the goals to come over and play at an international club or in England. So it was actually looking forward to it more than actually anxious, if I can put it that way.
Yeah, it was kind of like, it was a natural break. So you were kind of like, well, I'm ready then. If there's going to be a break, I may as well have a big change.
Yes, there you go. Exactly like that. I think COVID almost made that decision a little bit easier. It's almost like, okay, it's always been in my head for prior to COVID. There was a couple of months where I was thinking about it. So when COVID hit, it was almost like, okay, now I can make a clean break. So it actually in the end worked out, and I'm really enjoying it at the moment.
Well, it's certainly worked out. You make a clean break and then you come in and win the Premiership. But we'll come back onto that. Just one bit of housekeeping. If you can hear some background noise today, we're actually here at the Stoop on a day that the team are training. So that's what the background noise is. It's not the hordes of fans being kept at bay because we've got Tyrone on the podcast. No offence, Tyrone. So let's go back further then. So you started your career out in South Africa. You came over to the UK. You were still quite young in the career of a rugby player, but you'd had, 2-3 years of experience of playing kind of top-level rugby. At what point in your rugby career was rugby a viable option for you? Were there other sports? Was there other life? Was it a hobby? Like, how did you kind of come to it?
I grew up playing rugby. So it was one of those where from the age of 4 years old, I used to play that tag rugby, and back in South Africa it's a bit more rougher than what it is here at that age. But I grew up playing all sports, rugby, cricket, athletics, and even football to an extent. But I think rugby was always that one that stuck close to me. I enjoyed the contact side of it, and I was good at it from a young age, so it really did help push me in that direction. I think as a kid, I loved sport in general. I wasn't a big person in terms of class and stuff like that. I couldn't wait to get back on the training field with my friends and everything. So I think for me, from a young age, it was always a goal. I think in primary school, always had teachers warn you that it's not a viable option because not everyone can make it. But it's one of those where you enjoy it so much, you just keep pushing at it. And then I think probably age of 13, I ended up making my provincial team and got a bursary to high school.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I think that's when it really actually became that took a bigger step into my rugby career. And it was just from there, it's gone well, but also ups and downs. That's really stood out.
Yeah, well, I'd say that's the nature of a career professional sports, right? Those ups and downs, but also how unlikely it is to be a professional sports person when you actually think about the amount of people that love playing sport. So you kind of sound quite relaxed about it, but I imagine you were quite intense in the best way in terms of when you knew you were good at it and you could do it, that you were going to work really hard at it. Would that be fair?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think working hard is probably the thing that gets a lot of people in terms of to the place where they are when they're successful in their career. I think the realization that you can make it, I think that's probably the first step, but the rest is that you actually need to do it to get there.
Yeah.
So I think, like you say, it's the intent was always there. It's like, now I can make it, and now I actually need to put the work in and do it. And I think then it just becomes more desperate for that success, and even makes you work harder to an extent because it's within your grasp.
Yeah, that's interesting actually, that it's something then that becomes part of your control. I guess was that moment for you at 13 when you got that bursary to go to high school that you suddenly go, well, actually, if I really go for it, this is now there beyond being a dream that teachers or other people may say, oh, pursue it, but you might not get there. You're like, oh no, actually, now it's in my control to achieve it.
Yeah, I think that it was exactly that. I probably at 13 because the year before I didn't make the squad, so it was a bit at that age you're young, you don't really understand the hardships of it. 13 I made the squad, but I was still from a very small town, extremely small town.
Yeah.
So I made the provincial squad, but then the next year I moved to Johannesburg. The school was in Johannesburg, so making that big leap to now it's a big city, the schools are much bigger, the competition's tougher. Making that step, then like, okay, maybe I can make it work there. And then my first year went really well. I think also it's one of those where my mentality in terms of the physicality, at that age, some boys aren't like not willing to really throw their bodies. And I think because I was like coming from a small town, it wasn't that hard. You normally just throw your body into the... So I think for me, yeah, like you said, it's probably when I made that step from 13 to 14, going onto the bigger stage, but like still young. So
yeah,
but that was a big like, okay, now I can actually start going big for it.
And you talk about that physicality. I mean, even right at the start, you said that one of the reasons that rugby stood out for you was because of the contact, and that was something you enjoyed, which is certainly not true for me. But like you say, coming from a smaller town, going to Johannesburg, were you more prepared for that physicality then? Were you having to play with guys that were older, bigger than you, kind of from a younger age?
So it's I wouldn't say not really older, but there were probably boys bigger. But it's more like I'm willing to like throw my body. I enjoyed that part of physicality, where some boys probably enjoyed more the skill level, the passing, and didn't like getting smashed.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone likes it, but at that age, I was actually more inclined to it. The older I got, I started shifting away from it. My body became a bit more important. But yeah, I think the younger I actually really enjoyed that part. So I think that helped me stand out even when I went to the bigger school. That gave me that slight edge over quite a few of the boys. But yeah, I think the older you get, the smarter you get, and the more you have to protect yourself.
But your body's done the hard yards then, so you can afford the protection. So educate me and our listeners then in terms of what happens next in the South African provincial schools system. So you're 13, 14, you've got that bursary and you're playing rugby a lot more regularly in Joburg. How does that then progress from there to making the step up to professional rugby over those next few years?
So with us at school rugby in South Africa is very big. Like with our derby there, as JP versus Cares, we had 10,000 supporters.
Wow.
For a high school game.
Yeah.
So it's one of those where school rugby is quite big there. So it was almost like you got provincial levels from under 16 and under 18.
Okay.
So under 16, I made my provincial colours, which I was very happy about. Also had quite a few coaches who liked my type of style of play. So that did help a lot and gave me a lot of advice. And then I think around the 18 level is where it really starts to step up to another level, because you got your Craven Week, which is one of the biggest tournaments or underage tournaments in South Africa. And then you can make your SS Schools colours from there. where you will play against some of the teams. Like England came down that year. I think Italy, and France came down that year to us also.
Oh, wow, okay.
So that was quite cool. So I ended up making my provincial colours under 16 and under 18. And then I ended up making the SA schools B team, which was quite a big achievement for me. And I think for me, the biggest obstacle was when I was 17, I ended up picking up multiple injuries. So after my season, under 16 season, I picked up my knee injury. I came back from that and then played 3 months rugby, about half a season. And then I ended up doing my other knee injury. So I basically missed about a year through injuries.
And a year at what age? 17, 18?
16, 17, yeah.
16, 17. Wow, that's a lot of time away from the sport at that kind of formative age. Was it tough coming back into it then, kind of at the other side of that, when your peers had all progressed over the course of that year?
I think it was tough, but I was desperate by then.
Right.
Because missing, when you're 18, is basically your last year that you can fight to get a contract out of school.
Okay.
So I realized I had one more chance. That's what, to an extent, I was lucky it happened a year earlier and not a year later. So I was at 18, you're playing under 18, so I was in my final year and I was at my best. Whereas a year earlier, there would have been boys older than me around there. So it's one of those, when I came back, I knew I had one more chance. So I wasn't too focused on like other boys and stuff like that. For me, it was more in the fact that I need to be desperate to get this opportunity. And luckily, things went well for me that year, and I ended up making both the provincial and the SA team. So got a contract to the senior level.
But do you think that some of the success of that year is down to it being so simplified for you, that was the 1 year, one chance, you kind of had to go for it? It wasn't like you'd had the year before where you were kind of there or thereabouts, then you was like, oh, do I get another chance this year? Do you think that did help, or was that really the only option, was to succeed at that point? So
for me, I think it was probably the only option. It was one of those that if I want to get out and get into a good team out of school and actually get into a team where I have some merit behind me, and some, like, I've proved myself, I don't have to start all over. And I think for me, it's coming back from injury mentally is the biggest thing. It's like if you mentally can't get over your injury and come back, you're not going to be able to deliver on any scale. So I think for me, it was sport, in life and everything, it's all about your mindset. So if you can't get that right from the beginning in anything you do, I think you're going to struggle in life. So for me, it's one of those where from a young age I learned that, so and I've stuck with it.
And how would you describe your mindset? What does that look like? You mentioned sport, but in life generally, are you the sort of person that believes that if you do, I don't know, you work 100%, work really hard, that the results will follow, or to not sweat the small stuff, or like what do you put your mindset down to, and how would you describe it?
It's one of those where it's always it's tough to explain. So in rugby, it's always that my mindset's always been, I need to do the best I can do. I can't do more, and I can't control the uncontrollables. So if something's out of my control, I don't worry about it. But if I've done something that's led to a bad decision, then I know I need to fix that. Right. So for me, it's one of those where if my mind is correct, it's like if I'm on the field and I'm panicking because I've made a mistake, doesn't help anyone, doesn't help the team, doesn't help me. Or feel similar. I always try to keep a happy side. Me and my little family is very happy on that. So, and it's one of those where if I can't control it, I can't control it. And I'm quite laid back, so I don't get upset. I don't get I'm quite chilled with a lot of things. So, but yeah, I think the mindset for me, it's basically you need to always push for the best in whatever you do. But it's almost, you need to make sure you also have you're relaxed. If you overdo everything in your life and you don't have any time for rest, I think you're going to burn yourself out.
And then do you think that mindset, did you have that before you experienced this injury at 16, 17, or do you think that was kind of forged throughout that experience?
I think a bit of both. I don't know how I do. I've always been desperate in terms of playing and doing things. I've always wanted to achieve things. My biggest goal in life is to have a very happy family when I'm older and live a very comfortable life in terms of financially and stuff like that. And that's my number one priority in life. It's everything else leads to that, whether it be work, whether it be rugby, all of that. That the end goal is to make sure me and my family are happy at the end of the day and financially stable to make a living for our kids and grandkids if we have to. So I think for me that mindset's always been with me since I was young.
Yeah.
And I think injury wise, that helped me in fact of knowing that, okay, now there are setbacks and I can't do anything about it after the setback. So I think for me, once the setback was, once I realized that I can actually make an opportunity out of it, then I thought, so that's when my mindset shifted and fixed and was actually honed throughout the injury, because I can actually overcome it and even get better.
And do you think having those longer term goals, right, in terms of the happiness of you and your family and then the financial security that kind of goes along with that, has been grounding throughout school, rugby, life generally, that at the end of the day you can look back and go, am I happy? Is my fiance now wife happy? Is the little child happy? Like that's helped you with everything that kind of comes along what's down the track.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think it's almost like when I achieve something and I've made a big step in my career and stuff like that, it's almost like remembering this is just the start. Like the goal at the end of the day is to be at the highest level and reach my goal of, like I say, financial security and having a happy family, living a comfortable life. And that almost prevents me from taking my foot off the pedal. And one of those where it's probably that's like I say, driven me to keep going. And it's almost like naturally in life you let small things slip and stuff like that, but that sometimes brings you back. And I say, okay, I can't let that happen again because this is the goal. And even though I've achieved now recently, I can't, how to say, short-term success is not the goal at the end. It's long-term success. Yeah,
and in order to get long-term success, sometimes there'll be bumps along the road, right?
Definitely.
Because that's what you're learning from.
Yeah, and I think, like I say, if you can learn a way to grow from those, I think it'll just make you better in life and everything.
Fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. That's really interesting. I think will help. Hopefully, people start to understand you as a person as well, and kind of go, that's what's underpinning you. So I imagine, particularly in sport, right, one of the bigger challenges is not letting yourself get carried away by the highs and not letting the highs become too high, and then not letting the lows become too low, right? So when you get that call up, so let's go back to what, you're 18, you've got that call up, you've made your provincial colours, call up to the South Africa schoolboys. That must have felt like a huge high, and it could have been easy at that point to go, I've done it.
Yeah.
Amazing, and kind of take your foot off the gas. But then you then pushed on and went, okay, no, what's next? So what was next? What happened next after that for you?
So after that, I ended up having a really good tournament. I think that's also when you get there and you realise you're not the only good one out there and there's a lot of good players. You need to keep pushing. But ended up having a good year that year, and then I ended up signing a contract for the Lions, Golden Lions. So junior contract at the time. Also think the junior level there is quite competitive. So under 19, under 21, each got their own competition locally.
Okay.
So I ended up playing under 19 level for Lions. We won the tournament that season. We had quite a good team, to be fair. The following year I was 20, playing for the under 21 team. I ended up also making the S under 20 team that year.
Oh wow!
So that was also one of the big achievements in my career. I think that was probably the goal. That's the first big goal coming out of school, is to make that under 20 team and stuff like that. So yeah, that was really good. We ended up playing in France.
Oh, amazing.
Played against Marcus. We lost the semi-final against them by 1 point. So we were 13 points behind. Scored 2 tries, missed 1 conversion. I think it was 32-31. Lost the semi-final against them. And then, yeah, they got a bit of a hiding from France in the final. So
That must have been a mad experience for you. Was that kind of your first international kind of tour in terms of with
yes,
the
that was a big international tour. Like it was S-under-20. I mean, S-under-18 is schools level. Teams come over, so it wasn't too massive. But S-under-20 is one of the big tournaments that's out there. That's I think everyone thrives to make. I know a few of our boys recently made the squad, which is quite good. So I think it's one of those where I think everyone wants to make that, because that the next step at international level is your main team.
Yes.
So that's the first step to get into those situations. But it was a great experience. Loved it. A really good time. I think it's like playing against Marcus that time. In Tamak in France.
Yeah.
Played against him. So yeah, no, it was a good tournament, and I think that was also helped take another step further in my career, I think.
Yeah, and I think probably would you say that the experience you gain from that, playing against different sorts of opposition and different sorts of players, made you a better player when you got back to South Africa?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think it's almost a different style to an extent. Like we played against France in the group stage, and they were just massive. Their forward pack was massive, and that's coming from a South African team. So their forward pack was massive. So we struggled on the basis where we're normally strong.
Yes.
We lost that. So we had to try a different approach. Playing against England, very tough game, very good game. But then you've got your Curry twins.
Yeah,
one of them were playing. The other one already made his senior debut. And then Marcus was there, so people pulling strings and stuff like that. So that was a good contest. Like I say, losing by 1 point. And then we played against New Zealand, who love throwing the ball around.
Yeah.
In the third and fourth playoff. So we beat them in the third and fourth playoff, but that was also like comparing them to France. The styles of play were almost completely different. So it was a very good experience, but also eye-opening. It's like it's nice. It's good to see different styles out there, and you learn a few things from boys playing at that level.
And I guess also that there's not one way to be successful. Right, so playing in South Africa, it'd be easy to kind of go, well, I'm just going to play this way. This is how we're going to do it, and that's the way. And then, so after the Under-20s World Cup, what's then the timeline and the progress for you when you get back to South Africa? What happens next in terms of your club career?
I got back after that. It was so that mostly my when I was 20 years old. That year I was. Throughout the S-20 with camps and stuff like that. But I got back, and then we had the Curry Cup, and I made my first senior debut that year when I got back. So that was really like a good experience. But then I think the next big step was to Super Rugby the following year. And I ended up getting my start there, which was quite... or I ended up getting my debut there, which was... So Super Rugby in South Africa was big at that time, and my team, prior to the year I joined, had about 3 final playoffs, so in a really good place. When I joined, it was quite in a good place, if I can put it that way. But yeah, that was the next big step. Super Rugby was, and I think growing up in South Africa, that's a big goal. Playing against Crusaders, Waratahs, flipping, all those teams. It's one of those where you like grow up, you're watching those games, and it's like, okay, this is...
It's a bit of a pinch yourself, like, I'm at this level now.
Yeah. And I think, to be honest, 5-10 years ago, Super Rugby was probably the best tournament worldwide. I think the competition level was really tough. You had South Africa and New Zealand who were dominating world rugby.
Yeah.
So it's one of those where... growing up, that's probably a very big goal for a lot of rugby players in South Africa to play at that level. And I think that year was really good. I think similar to how I started. It took me a while to get my first start, but lucky, I think. I was on the bench, and then one of the boys ended up picking up a niggle just 2 days before the game, and I ended up getting my start at fullback, and ended up having a good game, and then it was good. And I think the nice thing was there was lots of competition in the team.
Yeah,
we had about four former Springbok players. In the 3 positions that I played, so it was really tough to get a go. But
so if you're playing, you're there on merit, right? You're getting over those guys.
But no, it's one of those where it's good to get that competition is always good for you. It's like I'm playing with boys that I'm still young, but these guys have got multiple international caps. 2 of them were still currently playing at the time, so. At the end, when I eventually got my nod ahead of them, it gave me a big confidence boost. But also you learn from those players. They've played at the highest level. They've been playing rugby for a much longer time than me. So you end up picking up a few things from them. And then when you get that chance, you just need to take it.
I think it's so interesting to hear that, Jen. I think probably in this country we're very familiar with the path trodden by homegrown talents, right? Whether it's coming through the academy or university systems. But it's kind of here... From the age of 13, 14, but 15, 16, there was a new challenge every year almost for you in South Africa, whether it was the schoolboy stuff, then the SA under-20s, then the Currie Cup, then Super Rugby. There's always another level for you to take your game onto. Did you find that there was a lot of pressure knowing that next step was kind of your next short-term aim? I know you said short-term aims don't equal the long-term goal, but you've got to tick them off. Did you ever put that pressure on, okay, I've got to be thinking about getting Super Rugby?
Yeah, no, I think you have to have those short-term goals, so that, like you say, you need to slowly tick off tick the boxes. I think one of those that you need to, I say the long-term success is the main goal, but there's a whole process to get there.
Yeah,
I don't tick off any of the boxes prior to there. I'm never going to get there. So it's always, and I think that's where what I've slightly seen being over here for a couple of years. I feel like in South Africa the competition at a younger age is very competitive, and I think, like you said, is that every year there's that new goal to strive towards. And I think at the end of the day, it's one of those where I'm striving for a new goal every year. You can't take your foot off the gas, and you need to keep going. And I think it's really, really good to have that. I think it gets a lot of boys excited, and you can't become complacent. Like get a senior contract, but I don't make under 20. There's quite a few boys that's taken that leap ahead of me. I don't get the shout at under Super Rugby. There's quite a few boys that get the shout ahead of me. So I think it's one of those where you just need to keep going at the end of the day.
Is that partly why do you think you were so keen to jump at the opportunity to come and play in the Premiership and challenge yourself in the UK, that there was, you seem like someone, Tyrone, who doesn't turn down opportunity when it presents itself, that you're kind of like, well, actually, if I'm going to do it, let's go and do it. So how did that move come about from, you've kind of gone through all those steps in South African rugby? When did England and the Premiership and Harlequins kind of come onto your radar?
So I was lucky. I had my debut season Super Rugby. I had a really good season, and then my next season also had a good season, and ended up securing my position the following season. And I've experienced 2 years of Super Rugby, and then Quins approached, and then it was one of those where I've played 2 years now at Super Rugby level.
Yeah,
I've experienced it. I've enjoyed it. But then it's also, the older you get, you start to almost look outside of your own bubble.
Yeah.
So it's one of those now. I've looked at, watched Top 14 on TV. I've watched Premiership on TV, all of that. So then it's like, okay, seeing Quins play. Going over to England, it's always that step. It's like, I love running. I love playing running rugby, but the weather's in the UK has always been, Yeah, it's one of those where a lot of South Africans will question their life choices when they come over.
I can imagine what you land and it's just, you're like, when does summer arrive? You're like, oh no, this is summer.
Yeah, it wasn't great. And then, but then it's like, Quinn still play my style of rugby. So I was lucky. The team that approached me at the time was the team that suited me the most.
Yeah, right,
So
okay.
it's one of those where, okay, there's a new opportunity, and there's things I want to work on. So coming over, my kicking game was probably a big thing, because even though Quinn's run, I know the rain is going to come there. It's going to rain in games. So I can improve aspects of my game and make my overall game a much better performance. So I think coming over, it was like, I need to find that balance. I don't want to come over and go to a team where I'm going to be restricted and I can't excel. At the end of the day, if you make that decision to come over just because of the opportunity, but it doesn't suit you, you don't excel. There's a lot of boys that I think that's struggled in that aspect in terms of they've made a big decision, but then it just hasn't worked out. And I think, because like you say, coming over, it's a big decision. It's a big step. So there's a lot of things that you need to take into account to make sure that everything works out. And like I was lucky that the team that approached me at the time was a team that suited me.
It's interesting that you've used the word luck a few times there, but then followed it up by talking about the hard work that you put in to do it, right? You said you were lucky that you had a good season in Super Rugby, but we've heard how hard you worked to get there. And you said, oh, lucky I made my position my own, but again, you worked really hard to do that. Do you think that, and I don't for a second feel it comes across as faux humility either, that hunger that comes from within for you, do you think that's, again, what presents these opportunities? Yes, there's luck, but you make your own luck, right? That if you're not working hard, those opportunities won't be there for you to either grab or discard.
Yeah, no, I agree. I use the word luck, I think, more in the context that a lot of things can go wrong in a career. And I think one bad step or one wrong decision and you're in trouble for a couple of months, or you need to then reevaluate where you stand. I think for me, I've always had that drive, and I think it's, at the end of the day, opportunities will present themselves and you need to take them. And I think that's something I've been really good with in my career. Yeah. I don't let an opportunity get away, and I won't. I heard a podcast, I think it was Ray Lewis who said it. It's like, if you lose your position to me, you're not going to get it back.
Yeah.
And that's always like, if I get an opportunity, I'm going full out at it, because that opportunity might not come again.
Yeah.
If I don't take it with both hands, I'm flipping, I might not get that opportunity again. So yeah. I've always thrived that, give me the opportunity, put the ball in my court. If I don't deliver, then I understand.
Yeah.
It's all on me. But when I get that ball, when I get that opportunity, I'm coming really hard. And that's been my mindset since I was young. It's like, that opportunity comes, you need to take it. And I think that's where I say I've been lucky that I've been good with my opportunities. It's like I've gotten quite far in my career at a young age.
Oh, it's fascinating to hear the way you kind of talk about taking those opportunities and that idea that if you're going to give me an opportunity, well, I'm going to take it, and then it's on me, right? Like you spoke about earlier, controlling what you can control. So then I wonder, like with the move to the UK, yes, there's the rugby element. It sounds the right team at the right time for you in your career, but then outside of that, back to your other goals of having a happy family. There's someone else in this conversation. There's your fiance at the time.
Fiance time, wife now.
Wife now. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How did you broach that subject of a potential move to England with her? Because obviously that's a big change for you and where you're going to start your family life together potentially.
So I was lucky in terms of, I say lucky again, but yeah, I am lucky. My wife is really great.
We can say luck there. That's fine. Yeah.
So we've known each other since young. I went to school with her brother and all that. So growing up, I've always been determined in terms of she's known that in order for me to be my long-term goal, have a successful career, have a happy family, be financially stable, rugby is my route. And I'm gonna go full out there.
Yeah.
So from once we started dating, etc., it was, she knew that if I have to move due to rugby, I need to make that decision, because at the end of the day, in order for us to be happy and financially stable, that decision needs to be made. And she's been loving and supportive of me so she knew if I move, she's following me.
Right.
If I stay, she follows. So she's been very supportive of all my decisions. And I think it's one of those where I did explain to her that as a rugby player, as a sportsman, there's a lot of like moving or decisions that need to be made in your career and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And she was very happy and supportive. And when I told her of the opportunity to come over, she was actually looking forward to it. So Brilliant. It was one of those where it's good for the family. And then, to be honest, coming over, Annie Sang has been a legend. Like, my wife has enjoyed it. She's loved it, yeah. It's probably the best experience she's had. A little bit different because I was quite young in my previous team.
Yeah.
But literally, she's come in. The other wives have been great. So it's one of those where the move was actually much easier than we expected. The transition was easy. By the weather, I think she's sometimes she's more
nothing's perfect
of a summer person. Nothing's perfect. Yeah, but I think she's always been supportive of me, and I think from a young age I did tell her that I knew the decision that might need to be made in the future, and I didn't want to get to a situation where there's conflict between me and her.
Yeah,
because of rugby, or where my decision on rugby is not purely based on my future goal, like I say, success and best for my career. Doesn't mean financially, but I can take the next step in my career.
That progression that gets you to that goal.
That might be the better decision to make. So as long as she, and then she's been supportive of me from the beginning. So I am very lucky in that regard.
You are very lucky there. Yes, yeah, you are very lucky that she was willing to give up the sun and lovely climate of South Africa for. But South West London, there's worse places in the world, right?
Yeah, Scotland, one of them.
Exactly. Yeah. So any rumours you may read in the future of Tyrone being linked to Scotland, we know is being rubbish, because we'll go to a point, but never any further than that. Really interesting. I wanted to ask that because I think there's obviously more to you guys as rugby players than just the 80 minutes that we see on the Saturday. There's the family, there's the support network behind that, but often that can come, and certainly it sounds like with this group at Quins at the moment, that comes from within the team as well, that actually there's the rugby element, but you mentioned Andy Sanger, who looks after the player welfare here at the club, and how keen he is to foster those relationships, right, with whether it be the other wives, the other girlfriends, the wider families of players. Did you know about that before you joined, or has that been a welcome surprise post being here about that culture and that environment?
I think that every team claims to have it. And no like disrespect to any team. I think every team claims to have it. And back in South Africa, I had one of my best friends that I was very close with, and then we had a little group of ours who were really close. So I had my little thing there. Yeah. But I think coming over here, the inclusive of everyone, players, wives, families, I think it was a shock. No, not a shock. It was exciting, if I can put it that way.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those, every team to get you over or to get you to their team, it's like, we've got a good environment, good atmosphere, good that. And I think every team does have their own environment that they're suited to. But I think coming to Quins, it was it's hard to say. It was really enjoyable. I think it was, you come and when it's game time, it's game time, you need to be serious. But the environment off the field is, I get along with everyone. My wife gets along with everyone. So it's one of those, it was welcoming. It was literally, it made the transition into rugby easy. Like, I just literally came in and played it. I didn't have to worry about any external factors. And it was literally, you just come in and do your job.
Interesting. No, and what a job you did, right? I mentioned it in the intro, right? You got that debut again. You were, maybe outwardly patient, maybe not so patient behind the scenes, wanting to play, wanting to get your chance. You played in that game away at Newcastle Falcons. I think certainly supporters were saying, "Come on, we've signed him. We want to see him. We want to see him play." And you scored 2 unreal tries, which in hindsight aren't even that unreal because you do it all the time, Tyrone. You're always carving out breaking lines. But were you focused on trying to make a mark with that opportunity and grab that opportunity? Was that go back to what you were talking about earlier of, okay, I've got the chance to play, so come and get this shirt off me now?
Yeah, I think it's one of those where I've just come over to a new team, so eager to get my chance, but also being patient. Because at the end of the day, I'm new here, so I don't it's not like my previous team where I've had 2 years senior experience. I've secured my spot, so there is a place for you. You can't overstep your bounds. I think it's just being patient, and then, like I said, when that chance comes, you can't let it go. Like if I got my chance there and I didn't take it, then I've got no one else to blame but myself. So I think it was one of those, I got that chance and it was okay, now we need to go full out, and I think I ended up doing that. Which I was quite happy about, getting those 2 tries.
Hey, I mean, you were happy, but then I think Quinn supporters up and down the country were very happy come the end of that season with your contribution. And I wonder, towards the end of that season, you obviously came into the team, but not on the wing as a fullback. After Mike Brown was kind of ruled out for the end of the season, and I wonder, was there any additional pressure because of whose boots or whose shirt you were stepping into, or was actually it quite welcome to be carving out your own name and keeping those distractions at bay?
Yeah, no, I think for me it was excitement more. I played wing for quite a few games prior to that, but I've always loved the fullback position, and Brian was doing a real good job for us. But when I got that opportunity, it's like I say, it's Brownie's gone for the rest of the season. I'm getting my shot at fullback. It's okay, now I need to secure the jersey and make it mine. And the competition's always good. It's always good. So having Brownie there, and we missed him. But then it was also like another opportunity for me to put a step forward. And I think fullback get a bit more ball, get a bit more opportunities in the field. So it's one of those where I didn't want to let that opportunity go. And even though it came off a negative for us as a team, I really wanted to grab it and secure that jersey. And I think I did it quite well.
You did it quite well.
Few games afterwards.
But then, do you think then perhaps that it was helpful that you and Brownie are such different personalities and players that actually it meant that you weren't trying to do what he does? You were playing Tyrone's games. So you were like, right, I'm going to show you what I can do. And then back to your point, if that hadn't worked out, at least you could say, well, I was honest with what I was doing and how I was playing, and the rest is uncontrollable.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, Brownie's done it for so many years. He's probably one of the best in the game at the fullback position. So I think it's one of those where trying to imitate him, you just, you're going to kick yourself in the face. But I think that's one of those that, like you say, we offer different things at the moment. And I've always been eager to put my mark down, and it was one of those where stay true to myself and then go out guns blazing, and also confidence. I knew that if I ended up delivering and doing what I need to do, I know I can be at that level also. So I think for me it's you can't play like someone else. You can always pick up pointers, you can always learn things. But if you try to do what someone else does, they're good at that for a reason. And he's been doing it for a long time. So multiple international caps with 300 Harlequins games. So he's one of the best to do it. So you're not going to gain anything by just trying to be the next Mike Brown. So
Yeah,
I think
you want to be yourself, right? You want to be the first Tyrone Green.
Yeah, so I think for me it was more exciting, and I don't let pressure affect me, because at the end of the day, it is big boots to fill, but it's also an opportunity.
Yeah.
Fill those boots. Not saying I did that.
No, but equally what you're saying is you're not trying to fill those boots.
Yes.
You're playing in your own boots. You're playing in your own shirt. So,
and I put my mark down.
Yeah.
It brings something else. It brings something different to the team. So it was one of those that you need to put your own mark forward and make sure that you can bring something else to the team and make sure that the team benefits from it.
Okay, and then we've talked a bit about your long-term goals, right, in terms of happy, successful, financially stable. I think on that last one, financially stable, I've got a question that we like to ask on the podcast, which is, would you categorise yourself as a spender or a saver?
I would probably say a bit of both, in terms of I like spending, but not extravagant. Like I'm not extravagant spender. My things I like spending money on is quite like not big, so I'm not too big in those things.
You've not got like an addiction to like really expensive, I don't know, watches, houses, shoes, those sorts of things.
No, that's why I say I'm probably in the middle. I don't have an addiction, or I don't spend big money on big things. It doesn't. I like my small things.
Okay.
So yeah, it's one of those where that's why I'm in the middle, so not too far off either side.
I think that's a very healthy place to be, rather than being. You don't want to be at the extreme of anything, really, do you? So when you say you don't spend on big things, but you do, so what are the things that you kind of spend your money on?
Yeah, so I've got like weird taste. So like anime, I love my anime. So I've got tattoos on it. So collectibles like action figures and the manga books or light novels.
Yeah.
Also I don't know what you call it. You're building your action figures up and stuff like that. So I'll buy those, and got a few of them at home on a shelf and stuff like that. So I've got a big, like, later when I'm older, I want to have my own room with a lot of anime collectibles, books, and everything. So where I can actually have a case of them, and it's like a whole...
And that's like your collection that you've built up.
Yeah, so like at the moment I've got a lot of books and quite a lot of action figures, and it's just slowly building it up over time. Not getting too eager to buy a lot at the moment, but yeah, I think it's just that's probably one of my biggest like hobbies and stuff like that. So,
and where does that come from for you? Is that something you've always had a passion for, or did you come to it kind of relatively recently and kind of got really like lasered in, really focused on it?
So I think growing up, Dragon Ball Z is probably my favorite anime growing up. The only one I watched to get home from playing with friends or from school, and 5 o'clock every day the half an hour show's on.
Right, okay.
So you really enjoy that, and you really get, like, I really loved it. But never actually really went further in Dragon Ball while growing up. But then I'd say about 4 years ago, I just started to watch the whole series over again, and then decided to try something else.
Yeah.
And then, domino effect. And
it's a slippery slope.
Yeah, and then I ended up really couldn't stop. And that's probably my main source of TV at the moment. Like, that's probably on our big TV and all the time.
And what is it, for someone that isn't a fan of that per se, what is it about anime, manga, those sorts of things that kind of draws you in?
So for me, I think of course the action, the graphics, I think is quite intense and quite good. And the difference between cartoons and anime for me is the concept and the stories. Like, you can there's actually a proper storyline, a concept behind it that as a grown-up you can follow it.
Yeah.
Whereas cartoons, it's more inclined for kids to watch and stuff like that. So with anime, like in the one anime, Naruto, one of the characters used to say that before we complete this mission, make sure you visualize it at least 3 times in your head. So that if something comes up, you know exactly what to do. As sports people, like before a game, you visualize what you do in the game. You visualize on how to approach a situation and stuff like that. I'm big on visualization also, so you learn small things like that from the show. Most of the characters I watch work extremely hard to achieve a goal or to be the strongest, trustworthy friends. So there's a lot of like values in life I think you can learn from there. And I think when I like 3-4 years ago started it and I got older, and you actually then start to see a lot of the hidden meanings behind it and stuff like that. And then of course some of it's just fun to watch. The fight scenes are quite cool. The graphics are quite fun. But I think it is weird. I think mentally, like a lot of grown-ups can't like process like the animation on it. I understand, but that's my thing.
I think that's why I asked, because it's maybe the sort of thing that on paper, or if you read that, you go, what? And maybe like move past it for a lot of people. But I think to understand that, yes, there's the bit of, hey, it's something you enjoy, so like that's why you like to do it, because you enjoy it. But equally that there is another angle to it, right? People read books, people watch movies, like Hollywood movies, Marvel, whatever. They're not factually accurate stories or based on real events, but you learn something, you take something from all of that art. And I think this is another form that is maybe a bit different, but I think that has lots to offer. And it's interesting to kind of hear how you started by watching Dragon Ball Z, right? And then that opened up that world. And I imagine it's a huge world, right?
Yeah, true. Dragon Ball Z, probably all in all, have over 400 episodes. You've got 150 from Dragon Ball.
Wow.
You've got 280 from Z. You've got 140 from Super. So you've got a lot of, in One Piece, you've got over 1,040 episodes currently airing, and it's still going. That's the longest running anime though. It's been running since 1999.
Wow.
Like I said, Naruto, it's got 720. The spin-off has already got close to 300. It's got 280, I think. So you got, those are your three biggest. You got Bleach, 360, which is also quite big. So all those animes are great to watch, and those are your ones that started very long ago.
Yeah.
So like One Piece that I said has been running for about 24 years now. You can actually physically see how the animation has changed over the...
Amazing. Actually, watching episodes back from 20 years ago.
Yeah, and I've rewatched One Piece 2-3 times. So yeah, it's you actually get so like shocked in terms of how the characters actually physically change over the years. And then of course there's anime now that's quite very pleasing to the eye. And you like the storylines, you like the fight scenes, the heroes, the villains. I think those are always quite good. But then you also get your detective ones. So I think there's a lot of different styles of anime, which gives, I think, like I know, who's it? Stylebender, he loves Naruto and Avatar. So I think it's one of those where it gives you a lot of options where you can... Yeah, but
it's more than just one genre, right? Like as you said, even there,
horror, detective. There's flippant fantasy. There's adventure. There's comedy. There's actually slice of life where you go to school and they just normal children go, or not children, high school kids go to school, and there's drama where actual real life like problems you face in high school. You would actually see how those characters go through the same problems. I'm not a big fan of that drama, but
no, but it's the same as, to break it down and people look at it and go, you're a fan of anime, but that's saying you're a fan of movies, right? Like there's all those different genres, the different actors, the different styles, directors, all those sorts of things. It's the same, just in this other medium. Yeah,
and then there's even to an extent the Chinese anime that's also got a different side to it, where they focus on the cultivation system in terms of your body, the medicine healing, the energy inside your body and stuff like that. Some Japanese anime have got the similar concepts. So there's so many genres out there that I think you can literally find anything. You can find horror where it's actually flipping like literally scary, but
not for me, that one. We'll skip over that.
Rather not, but I think that the variety is always out there, and like I say, for the last 3-4 years I've gone a bit overboard and I've watched a lot, but I enjoy it. So it's one of, like I say, it's one of weird things, but fun to get involved.
And do you find that it's helpful to have an interest and a passion like that that's away from rugby? Because whilst rugby is also obviously your passion, you're very, very good at it, and it's something you do every day, but it is ultimately your job, and it must be difficult to not have that separation if you haven't got something else outside
No,
of it.
definitely. I think having that separation, or having something else where you don't even just take your mind off completely, I think is always quite good. And anime has led to a lot of things. Like I've had a big appeal in Japan, Japanese culture, their history and stuff like that. Learning the language a little bit.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, so it's one of those where through anime I've actually taken an interest in Japan as a country as a whole. And then also it's one of those where you just learn new things, and like I'm like wanting to write my own book one day through the animation and stuff like that. So it just creates, like you say, it's just taking your mind completely away from rugby and investing a part of yourself in something else.
Yeah.
And yeah, hopefully it doesn't make me too lazy though. I think I'm just thinking of that a little bit.
Hey, I think you've got a 9-month-old, you say? You've got no danger of being too lazy, because he'll be walking around soon and then that's it. Watching anime's gone.
I'm trying to get him onto the anime so he can watch with me.
Smart. That's smart. That's smart parenting. I like that. I'm taking notes. Here. Okay, and then look, this has been a really, for me anyway, Tyrone, really enlightening conversation to learn a bit more about who you are beyond an incredible rugby player, right? And kind of the different layers and bits in your life and those goals that you've set and how they kind of underpin everything. So I think I already know the answer to my last question, but I want to hear how you'd articulate it, which is in those difficult moments, right? Like, and that's right now, even you're on the comeback from a really serious injury, that injury you had when you were 16, 17, moving to a new country, all those different things you've experienced in those dark moments where sometimes you can get low, get down. What is it that you find joy in that kind of pulls you out of that?
Yeah, I think naturally my family at the moment. Like a part of me enjoying a little bit of time at home. But to be fair, I'm getting a few sessions in at the moment, so not much time. But in the beginning of the injury, when I couldn't do too much and had to wait for the op, and then just after the op, I couldn't get too much done. I think being at home with my little one and my wife, I think it like gives you a little bit more time at home, and I think that is always fun to have. I think we're lucky at Quins, we get a bit more time. I think a lot of sports people do get, but yeah, I think that those few weeks at home, I think my wife was a bit sad to see me go after a few weeks at home.
That's what she told you, Tyrone. She was fine.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I think it's I think that's probably, especially this injury, has been great. But also for me, it's always taking the positive out of it. This injury, it's probably one of my longest. Okay, it's actually the longest period away from rugby I've been since I've started my professional setup. Last time I was away was, like I say, 16, 17. I was away this long. But take the positive. I can work on a few things that I don't get to due to playing all the time. I can improve a few aspects. I can maybe look after my body a little bit better. So you always try work out what's best for you at that time and take the positives out of it. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, it's there's no point in dwelling on it and and I learned that from a very young age, is that I can do nothing about it now. After I got injured, I can literally do nothing about it on it. So it's pointless being sad, and it's one of those that's frustrating. It affects a lot of things when you get injured. You can't progress forward in your career. You can't take that step forward. Yeah. But at the end of the day, there's things now that you can improve. You've got that extra time. Yeah. Like I say, family-wise, love it. Now I can actually work on my body. I can actually come back stronger due to the fact that I'm working purely on my quad now. And so I come back stronger. So it's always those. You need to take out the positives and you need to move forward.
And I think you said they're taking out the positives, but I think even just taking positive action, right, on what you can control. As you say, like it's an injury, you can't go back and redo the day and not pick up the injury, right? It's happened, so you're here. So what are the elements that you can control to progress out of that, but also recognise that maybe that struggle or whatever that is, we'll use the injury as the example, is not the only thing that's happening in your life. So there's the family, there's anime, there's all sorts of other things that you can go, well, I don't just have to look at my knee for the next 8 months and wait for it to heal.
Yeah, and maybe it happened for a reason at the end of the day. So maybe at the end of the day something like, so it's always you need to enjoy life.
Yeah,
you can't dwell on, and I get it. I think it's not that easy for everyone, and an injury comes at a really bad time. It's much harder to get over and stuff like that. And I think I say I'm lucky again, but I got my injuries when I was quite young, 2 big injuries when I was quite young.
Yeah.
So it's one of those now, I learned from a very young age that there's nothing you can do about it. You need to move forward and you need to get better. But I do get it that there are really some times where you're on the verge of a breakthrough and then you pick up an injury or you've picked up multiple injuries. So, but yeah, at the end of the day, I think you need to just keep pushing and try keep a positive mindset out of it.
I love that. Well, that's certainly a key takeaway, Tyrone. You said that you're lucky on innumerable occasions, but I think as I speak for all Quins fans when I say we're the lucky ones to have you at the club. We love watching you play and can't wait to see you back on the pitch soon. And thank you very much for coming on the Diary of a Harlequin.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.